Hello and welcome to the Old Garage, number 8. I'm Wild Bill. And no, this has nothing to do with Quentin Tarantino. This is not the Hateful Eight. But we do have a few questions that have come up, so let's go ahead and get to them. First one, we got Supercharged 350. He asked, was car wiring all cloth coated in the start? When was the first wiring harness made and sold to the car makers? Well, I know, I think it was Daniel Silverthorne actually gave you an answer to that. But actually, in the earliest cars, first of all, the early steam cars didn't have any electrical components of any kind. And even gas cars, other than just ignition systems, didn't. And some of the gas cars didn't even have that. You had the Benz designed engines with spark plugs, but there were also what were called hot tube ignition engines, which didn't use any electricity at all. So, of course, electric cars needed it, but mostly harnesses, as like you're thinking of, didn't start coming about until cars stopped being strictly handmade. Famously, probably the Dodge brothers were ones probably to really start making standardized harnesses. Most people may not be aware that Dodge started off actually as manufacturers of parts for Model Ts. That's how their company started. They didn't start making their own cars until about 1915, when they finally said, hey, you know what, we're making all the parts for Ford, why don't we do it ourselves? But wiring harnesses, wires were usually going to be cloth coated that had some sort of resin impregnated in it. Also asbestos was sometimes used. But it wasn't until, getting up towards World War I are you really going to see actual wiring harnesses being used, once you start really getting into serious mass production of cars. Okay, what have we got next here? Now, Daniel Silverthorne. You're going to hear some names over and over again because these are coming from the same people from different episodes. It says, were there any innovations being made during the early years of automobiles in Southeast Asia? And also, since it obviously isn't dinosaurs, what are some of your non-automotive interests beyond the small aquarium behind you? Hey, that's not that small, actually. I mean, that's a 50-gallon. Innovations being made in Asia. During the vintage era, not particularly. Really, at that point in time, in the World War I era, the only country in that, in Asia that was really making vehicles at all was Japan, and they weren't making private cars. They did make during World War I. They did build some of their own trucks, but really it wasn't until the 30s that you start seeing cars being built in Asia, and that's going to be again in Japan. But the automotive industry in that side of the world really didn't pick up until after World War II. As far as some of my non-interests or non-automotive interests, I like to cook. I do it seriously. In fact, I'm going to be doing a lot of it today. I'm into woodworking and the making probably most of the furniture in my house I built, and I like singing and doing music videos, and I do that too as fun. So that's some of my non-car stuff. Okay, Gabriel F. says, you've talked about Germans, French, British, to some degree American innovators. What was the early automotive industry like in less industrialized and secondary powers in the lead up to the First World War? He mentions, Austria, Hungary, Russia, and let's probably Australia. Okay. When it comes to, prior to World War I, your hot spots were those countries in which you already had industrialization. Australia, actually, I've already did an episode, on Herbert Thompson, about, down under. But America, you had a lot. Europe, all over the place. Just about every country in Europe. I mean, you have some incredible, beautiful cars from Belgium, from Sweden, from Switzerland, Germany, from Finland. There's cars in Greece. There's being built. There's, you mentioned Russia, etc. Yeah, it's where you had industrialization. Is where they grew, and as long as you had enough people and enough machines, you were going to have cars. There was even a vintage make in Mexico, for that matter, where you didn't have cars being built in the world were areas where it was still primarily agricultural, and you didn't have large industrial centers. So in Africa, in South America, in much of Asia, there wasn't much of a vintage cars going on, and they would import them. If you had money and you were in Zimbabwe or whatever, you're gonna have, there's no one in Zimbabwe building cars at that time, so you'd have to import them. And now see, James MacArthur, we got one here. Couple questions for you. How long did it take old coal and wood boilers to make enough steam to move a car, and how long did it take for Serpillet's gas-fired boiler to make enough steam to move a car? That's question one. Okay. Well, an old, the coal fire, wood fired, it takes a long time to get the fire hot. Coal, you don't just stick a match onto coal and it just goes poof. The same is true with wood. So it could take a good 15 minutes or so just to get the fire hot enough to actually start heating the water, and then a good 15 minutes from there before you're rolling. So 20-30 minutes was pretty much the norm for a coal fire. Now, when you're talking about the gas fire, yeah, that's a lot quicker because the gas is more volatile. You're going to get your heat faster. And so you still have to wait the 15 minutes or so, on a Serpillet boiler to get the water hot, but now you're only at 15 to 20 minutes to get the thing running. So it's going to cut you a lot of time. Now, the second question that you had, this is getting out of the Serpillet. Second question, with Serpillet's boiler, would it run on any liquid fuel, be it petrol or kerosene? He mentions if so, that's interesting, as this may have been the first flex fuel cars around. Well, the answer is actually no. It wouldn't. Like you think about flex fuel and biodiesel and stuff like that today. The Serpillet boilers were actually a bit finicky. They had to have a pilot light, and the pilot light had to run on a very high grade fuel so that it wouldn't just blow itself out. So you were using some very a very high end gasoline, or even an ethanol of sorts at that time, just to get the pilot going. And once the pilot's going, it takes about another 5 minutes for that pilot to get hot enough so that the fuel in the tank can go through the pilot tube, vaporize, hit the flame of the pilot, and enter the boiler and actually create the heat. And there's, so you have a limitation of viscosity. Okay, you couldn't put, oil, or vegetable oil or diesel fuel into that system and it work, because it won't vaporize at a low enough temperature. So I know what you're getting at, but it really didn't. It just didn't work quite that way. So, okay, good question. All right. It's one. Did Renault run into any legal problems by removing the badging from the engine block from his new car? You seem to be implying that he did, since you stated he had no intention of producing the vehicle, had some friends. Did this lead to problems with acquiring or building an engine for a production run of the car he designed? Was this a common issue? He ended up building some 60 of those little cars, and he scraped the Didion Bouton badge off of every one of them. Okay. Did that get him into legal trouble? No. What got him into legal trouble was actually just being him. He didn't have many scruples. He didn't really care much about people. He was about money and things, and so he ended his life in prison because he was accused of being a conspirator with the Nazis during World War II. And there's a lot of debate about that. Was he guilty or not? I don't know. But the fact is that the man was very much kind of like Obadiah Stane from, Iron Man, except scrawny. Didn't care about people, he wanted what he wanted, and he was going to get it, over your back or over your corpse. He didn't care. And so he just made a lot of enemies, and eventually it caught up with him. So, but regarding the scraping the badges, didn't get in trouble for that, but in short order he was making his own engines anyway, so it was no longer going to be an issue. Well, there's going to be plenty of episodes on Renault stuff, because he did a lot of things. Okay. Now another question. Okay, there's another James MacArthur one, and I gave you a little of this. He says, so many of these vintage cars had open passenger compartments that left the driver riders out in the elements. I have to think it's quite cold. When Renault demonstrated his car on Christmas Eve, when did it become fashionable to enclose the passengers and driver? That's called a saloon car, and I have to say that. When you posted that on the Renault, video, it was Renault who was the first to do that in a production car, to actually make an enclosed body, which he did in 1899. So we're going to, and that's going to be an episode on that at some point too, because I'm still getting through all the founding fathers, and I can make that a playlist, and then we can go all over the place. But yeah, 1899 is when that first happened. Okay. Question from Mark Stiles, and his question, he says, why don't you do the, ask people to like and subscribe on all of your videos? It's been proven that is something that is helpful. It's actually a question that you're not the only one that's asked me that. And before I started this channel, the first episode was like February 6th or something, but there was a good 6 months before then when I was researching, talking to other YouTubers that I knew, and I know a few with large channels, most of you know I do know Drock, but he's not the only one. But I talked to many of them, some with channels with millions of subscribers. And I got two different, basically, responses to that, and after distilling it, I find that if you're going to do that, it's because ask to like and subscribe, it's because your audience is younger. And a channel that's geared towards a young audience you have to tell them what to do, because otherwise they just won't. Whereas if you have a YouTube channel that is geared more towards an older audience, those folks, if you tell them what to do, they tend to get mad and say, don't tell me what to do. I assumed that my channel would be one that an older audience would probably appreciate more, and so I haven't done it. Except once, and I think it was like the second, The Old Garage, and I did the old, like and subscribe, or this, centipede will crawl on your face, but, that didn't go over so well. I think I made the right decision for my channel. There's, if I had, all sorts of, animations and graphics and all sorts of other stuff like that going on, and it'd be the like and subscribe, and smash that notification bell, but it's just not my style. And I don't think it's the people that enjoy The Office that enjoy what I do would actually want that. So that's my reasoning. But good question. Okay, I got one more here. Okay, it's not really a question, but this was also from the Renault video, and this was a comment made by Vaclav Fate. And he said, my favorite button is Jensen. He even spent one season with Renault. Now, come on, people. Have you not looked at my episodes? Have you not read the descriptions? How many puns have I just left open for you? I mean, look at the dynamic duo episode that I did. I mean, I was saying, please, throw out the electricity puns. Nobody. It was dead silence. Vaclav, finally, someone has figured out that I expect some humor. Okay? If there's a pun to be had, throw out the punishment, no matter whether you think it's punny or not. Or even if you go to the penitentiary for it. Because this is the internet. And if you perpetrate the perfect pun, no one's going to kill you. They'll just send you viruses to your computer. So you're safe. Anyway, that's the questions for today's The Old Garage. We will see you next time. Peace.